Hello, this is Dr. Jeff Kim, and welcome to episode 5 of Roots of Saigu. I'm having such a wonderful conversation with Faith's founder and CEO, Hapen Im, with Faith and Community Empowerment. We've been talking about the roots of Saigu, like how could that happen? And we've been understanding some of those roots, the devastation that was caused, but then also later down the line, now 30 years past, the forgiveness, the reconciliation, and we're starting to maybe look at if there's any fruit that came from this very painful experience. Last week, we had a chance to talk about the C2 leadership. Today, we're going to talk about bridge building and solidarity.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I remember when I was in Korea, and I think there was someone from the African American community that came on the TV screen, and I remember going, "Who or what?" And that was kind of my very first memory. But then in junior high, I was a winner of the religious release program where you take break from your school to have some religious education. There was an essay competition, and I won. And they selected a winner from each school, and so the award ceremony was at an African American church. And as part of the award ceremony, the choir came from the Black church, and the music was something that was quite energizing and inspiring. And I remember thinking, wow, church music could be fun and energizing, right? And so that also left an impression in my mind. And when I was in college, I even took an African American studies class at Berkeley. So those are just some of my connections. I had some friends in the African American community, but those are some touch points. But then during the LA riots, the media kept on lifting up this whole Black Korean conflict, for which I was a little confused because that was not the reality or experience that I had been exposed to. But in the subsequent period where, again, the Korean community was so devastated, and I saw that leaders from the Black community were basically saying very negative things about the Korean community, and that really hurt me. And it set me on a path to seek better ways to be a voice for the Korean American community. And at the same time, I've shared with you that my model, faith and community empowerment, came from a very prominent African American church called First AME. And as such, my life has changed. My path to, I think, where I would have gone changed because of my encounter in seeing a model at First AME where a church, when it partners with the broader community, the impact that it could have, the resources that they could leverage, and ultimately honor God and also build race relations through partnership. And so I owe a lot of gratitude, particularly to Pastor Cecil Murray and Reverend Mark Whitlock, who has led this effort. And as such, um, I think that in this pathway, whenever the LA riots topic came up and the devastation of the Korean community, I would find myself in a very strange place in which I would see leaders from the Black community, instead of responding with empathy. In any other situation, I could see, like, if someone talked about the devastation, the loss, the pain, all the things that the community encountered, that most people, especially good people, would respond with empathy. But instead of that, I would see a look of almost like vindication, would almost, and I've heard of, situations. This was not the LA riots, but subsequently in the Baltimore riots, when Korean and Black leaders got together, and again, the convened by the Justice Department, and when the Korean leaders supposedly shared again the devastation, the Black leaders, their response was like, "You need to give more to the Black community," right? Or I have to say, my former boss basically said, "Oh, I heard these store owners burn their own stores for insurance money." I don't know. Maybe there might have been one or two, but definitely does not reflect the over almost $500 million in property damage and all the losses, the mental health crisis that people showed up seeking help, and in all the subsequent losses. And so again, that was a source of pain slash confusion. Now, if these were leaders that I didn't appreciate, that I didn't care for, I think that I would have been able to just say, oh, bad people, right? And just forget about it. Life goes on, right? But because these were people, and I just gave you only a couple examples, but I would encounter constantly, particularly because, again, not it's not just in terms of the model of the organization that has really been transformational in my life. But in so many of the workspaces that I have been able to work and enter, I have to say that many of the supporters, even though they're institutions, when I look at the face behind those institutions, leading those institutions, many of them actually are leaders from the Black community. So again, I owe a lot of appreciation, gratitude. And so, you know, the fact that here I am having this great appreciation and gratitude, and yet something that is so close and dear to my heart, and the fact that it was such a defining moment, historic defining moment for the Korean American community, and to not receive empathy but almost be judged in such a strange way was something that I really sought understanding. And in some ways, it felt like if I had a boyfriend that my parents didn't approve, and I see the good in both, and I wanted to seek a way in which both could really see the good that I saw, right? And I think so in that way, it was love and commitment that kept me what is it, on this journey and on this path, right? Or else, like I said, I would have just blown it off and just said ugh, and walked away. And in this journey, there was kind of this aha moment. Like I said, it's like, why are these good people that would respond in a in a normal situation with empathy, why are they acting inconsistent to the people that I know that they are? And as I went down this path, there was this aha realization as I started to seek and research and ask questions, that there was a certain narrative that was being told of the Korean community that kept on being passed on in the Black community, and particularly about the liquor store owners. And in as such, what I learned was that these store owners were perceived as, in many ways, like predators, right? In the sense of that they were stealing business opportunities that rightfully belong to the Black community. And as such, these store owners really owed something to the Black community, whether it is giving back or, hiring from the local community, and that they were profiteering on the backs of the Black community, especially selling bad goods, right? And on top of that, that they were targeting to buy businesses in the Black community to sell bad goods, right? And so, and that they were racist. So there were like all these things. And so if you think about it, I mean, in essence, they were looked upon as being predators or evil, right? And so then when you do violence on evil, you're a hero. I mean, like if I was to go and punch anyone, I would be a bad person. But if some I don't know, shooter came into the room and I tackled and punched or whatever, I would be a hero. And that was kind of the aha moment. You know what? This narrative that is demonizing these store owners is what is causing, in many ways, that divide, and in many ways, inciting some of the anti-Asian violence slash hate. And and as such, I really sought ways to bridge and combat some of those myths that were being told of the store owners, right? And so, I've had the privilege, particularly presenting some of the data that I've shared, and I've only highlighted a few, but we do have a whole presentation. But in essence, particularly the post-Atlanta massacre, I think that it really opened a window in which all communities, but particularly the Black community, could see the pain that the Asian community was facing and encountering. And I clearly remember that there were many voices that were there to lift up and really combat, in some ways, the kind of what was it? Maybe white supremacy comments about these, particularly majority of women, Asian women, and some of the passing comments about, that was just really ridiculous. Instead of seeing them as victims, they were kind of, again, demonized and things like that. And so, again, a lot of voices jumped in, but I saw especially leaders from the Black community jumping in and being really a voice and fighting for the AAPI community. And so, for which I'm so grateful. But during that window, faith leaders, especially from the Black community, um, reached out. And I am, again, so grateful. And I am part of a something called the Faith Table, led by Jim Wallace, formerly with Sojourners, now with Georgetown University. And there will be about 30 to 40 denominational heads. I would say mostly Caucasian men, white evangelical organizations, etc. And there were a handful of women slash people of color. And I asked Jim Wallace if, really, again, leveraging this opportunity and opening after the post, Atlanta massacre, if I could do a presentation. And I have to say that one person that has been such a strong ally is Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner with the Skinner Leadership Institute. She also headed up the Black Congressional Caucus. She is a co-founder of the Black Congressional National Prayer Breakfast that brings about 3,000 leaders, every year as well. But she was confessing after the fact that um, she was having, as I was doing the presentation, she said that initially she was having a hissy fit, quote unquote, until her better self showed up. And basically, she said, and part of the reason was she thought, you know what, all these old white men, they're responsible for a lot of the pain that's happening in the Black community. And here I was, they're not taking, what is it? They're not giving enough time and attention to addressing the pains of the Black community. And here I was taking that attention away. So that was kind of her initial thought process. But she said that as she started to lean in, she realized that the Asian community were victims of the same discrimination and racism that the Black community was facing. And that really justice for the Black community could not happen without justice happening for the Asian community. And subsequently, she has invited me in to her home, actually, literally, whenever I go to DC. She has opened up her home and I've stayed there, but she's really opened up her Rolodex to connect me to her contacts. She's opened up her pocketbook and financed a joint PSA statement and a video campaign in addition to her valuable, precious time. And she has invited me to so many different campaigns to really be a voice. I've been in rooms where she would speak up and say, I think Haven needs to be a speaker, or she would support me, to really, again, bring the API voice. And also, in return, in many ways, I've joined on some of the other campaigns, including voter justice campaign. And when Supreme Court justice candidate nominee Ketanji Jackson was up for nomination, she invited me as well as another Hispanic pastor to put together a joint op-ed that was published. And I have to say, when Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Jackson got sworn in, I got an invite to be there. Unfortunately, I had a schedule conflict, so couldn't be there. But it's some of those kind of efforts. I have to say also, my former boss, Reverend Mark Whitlock, who again made that comment about the store owners, burning their own store for insurance money. He really made a 180-degree turnaround. I am truly, truly grateful. And basically, I remember, because he would join me in so many of these events, he even put together a op-ed that he chose to title Asian Lives Matter. And I remember when I read that, he was so transparent as such, but especially that title, like there was a part of me that, like, it was a glee on my face. I felt finally like seen or heard, that he understood me. Oh, all these years that I kept it close to my vest, partly because I just wasn't sure. Again, if my end goal was to say, yeah, you're wrong and da, 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 and exit, then I could have done that earlier. But because my end goal was to come to a place of better understanding, of better solidarity, right? Better allyship. And until I felt safe, I didn't want to bring it up and risk the relationship, right? And so again, I am so, so grateful that he chose to do this. And so when this title came, as I say, initial reaction was like this glee, like, ah, but then I thought, as a good friend, I should check in with him to make sure he knew what he was doing, because potentially there could be a lot of backlash, right? And so I did call and say, Mark, I really appreciate this title, but are you sure you want to do this to yourself? And he said, absolutely. And not only did he just write the article, but he called upon the LA Sentinel, which is one of a very prominent African American news publication, to publish it, as well as to have it in his First AME Church denomination newsletter that goes to every AME pastor, not just in the U.S. but in the world, and it was on the front page, right? As well. And he has again joined me in so many. Whenever I have called him, he's a very busy person, but whenever I have called him to join me, he has done so and has been very bold. And, I asked him, I said, Mark, you don't really have to do this. You could just support me quietly, behind the scene, but why do you choose to do this? And he said that he didn't want to be guilty of doing things to Asians what white people have done to the Black community. And again, it's just so grateful as such. And another Black leader that I want to share is also Naji Ali. Um, he is another person that I have gotten to know during each of our Saigu campaign, and he's the one that actually recommended that I reached out to Latasha Harlot's family, right, for the 25th, and then he asked again or suggested again for the 30th. But at the Saigu campaign, we did a kickoff at the city of LA, um, City Hall. The mayor was there, Eric Garcetti, a number of the city council members, and I had also invited a number of um, not just Korean leaders, but ethnic community leaders. And I had invited each of them to come and say a few words. And to my surprise and gratitude, he came to the mic, and all the media was there, mainstream media as well as ethnic media. And basically, he said, 30 years later, I'm here to say I'm sorry. We had the right to be angry about Latasha, but not the right to release that anger on fellow Angelinos. I think the Korean community, this was really kind of the first formal apology in front of all the major ethnic media, in front of City Hall, in front of all the elected officials, for which I am grateful. Another piece related to that is that there was another African American publication, and I was kind of curious how they would cover this article, right? They could have just said, "Oh, he's a traitor," right? But instead, what they did was they titled it um, "In Pursuit of Peace." And I heard actually and it was a picture because Naji, when he came on and he finished, he actually raised my hand. So it was me and Naji, right? Holding hands, standing in unity. And, you know, again, the mainstream media was there. And I would say because it was at City Hall, the mayor was there, even though it was a Saigu campaign, we're all in the picture, but many of them led with the picture of the mayor, right? Because it's in City Hall. But the backdrop of the story, I heard that the public, maybe the editor was looking to use the picture of the mayor, but I was told that the publisher, right, said no, 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 and chose the picture of me and Naji, right, holding hands, and as such, it said this is the story. And so again, just many of these examples show really, again, the heart of many wonderful leaders in the Black community and the friendship that we have walked and how they have really stood for us and for me especially, but really being a voice for Korean and Asian community. I do want to say that for Naji, even subsequently after that, when there was a Korean store wig owner who got killed, he called me. And honestly, you know what? I would say whenever these store owners get killed, etc., mainstream media hardly ever covers it. And I have to also say, I don't, I'm carrying so much that I usually don't have a lot of the bandwidth to be really doing the heavy lifting, right? To be able to go out and get the attention of mainstream media. But Naji reached out to say, hey, Pin, you know what? Not enough attention is being given to this gentleman who got killed. I will help you. Let's do a press conference. And as such, the store owner, the first name is Tom. And basically, because of Najee's help, we were able to hold a press conference, and all the mainstream media was there to help lift up the pain that was happening and the loss, right, of this Korean store owner. I want to go back. I'm just going on. I want to go back and basically, in my presentation, with after the presentation with Jim Wallace, as I said, different leaders from the Black community who are faith leaders had called me, and I we had done a lot of like Black Asian solidarity panels and events, etc. But I felt that really the level of influence of these Black faith leaders were, phenomenal, right? And I felt that it was a window of opportunity that God had given, and I wanted to steward it well. And as such, I kept this meeting very small. It was like four Black faith leaders, four Asian faith leaders. And in that convening, I started off by showing some of the data points, right? Combating the model minority myth. And then afterwards, I asked the Black faith leaders when was their first realization that the model minority myth was a myth. And you know what? Majority of them said right there. So again, that there is this complete misinformation of the Asian community, that we are doing well and that we are free of oppression. And as such, and then subsequent to that, I asked when was their encounter in which they received solidarity from the Asian American community. And many of them shared their story. And then I turned around to the Asian faith leaders to say, when was their kind of aha moment in which they were able to realize the pain and suffering of the African American community? And then the second question was, when was their encounter of receiving solidarity from the African American community? And we hosted two more of these kind of gatherings. And if you go to our website, you'll see kind of the talk and the resolution on our website at facela.org. But it has really led to these amazing uh, acts of solidarity and friendship, and what I would call true allyship. And actually, the conversation that we recorded, we said, going there, tough, what was it? Tough conversations um, and true allyship. I do feel that for many efforts around Black Asian solidarity, sometimes I see extremes on both ends. So maybe for maybe some of my liberal friends, they don't touch really the pain that the Asian community encounters in terms of the anti-Asian violence that comes directly from the African American community. Again, because of that misinformation and misperception, there's always elements of truth for which, I also own. Um, and at the same time, again, kind of helping to create bridges of understanding so that there is this greater understanding. But anyway, and as such, they go straight to white supremacy, but don't deal with the reality of the pain that we are ending up hurting each other. Just like I told you, what was it? The Squid Game, right? Yes, the game master set the table, but on the ground it's the players who are hurting each other, right? And so you have to deal with that. You can't just blame the game master, right? Because really, ultimately, even at the end of that story, it was the player, right, who turned around and said, we don't need to play by these rules. Let's go home, right? And so there is that. And then on the right, I have very extreme friends who are like saying, let's gun up. And during COVID, Asian gun ownership has shot through the roof, right? Because they're saying no one's there to protect us. We're going to do what we're going to do, right? And so there's a lot of, again, perhaps also anger slash also racism, because they're also hurting as well. And I think both extremes are not going to help our communities. We need to stop playing by the rules, right? But to be able to see each other, combat the myths, right? That we tell of one another, so that we can open our eyes to see that, again, we are all victims of the same racist system. The racist system doesn't discriminate who is going to discriminate against. I think when we awaken to that, and when we see people hurting each other, we should ask the question, why are they behaving this way? What are the human conditions that are causing these people to respond in a human way? And if we look at it that way, right, versus saying someone's racist or someone's a criminal, but really, again, let's look at the human conditions, right? I have told people, I know one complaint is that the store owners, for example, will go and follow people around, right? You know what? If I walked into a store and the store owner or whoever was following me around, I'd be so offended. I don't think I would ever come back, right? So I could definitely understand that response. I would respond the same way. But I think also you want to pause and say, I can't imagine what store owner would want to spend their time following anyone around unless they're very desperate. No police protection, they're making very little money. Every item that's being taken is a do or die situation, right? So again, by helping to foster understanding of the human conditions that have been set up, that is setting people up for failure, right, versus success, and recognizing it, right, will really help people along the way. So one last example that I've given is, if you want someone to jump from one place to another, but they are refusing to do so, you won't be happy with them. And in the situation with many of these store owners, there's a set expectation that, they should hire from the local community, they should be friendlier, they should be, giving generously to the community, they should show up at the local community barbecues, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a certain set of frustration that's there. But going back to, if you realize that the person who's not jumping is actually in a wheelchair, that kind of shifts things a little bit, right? At minimum, you're not going to yell at them because it's futile, right? And knowing that they're in a wheelchair doesn't take away your need for them to jump. However, now your approach to reaching that end goal will be very different. Either get some guys to throw the guy on their back and jump together, or get some strong guys, or ramp, whatever, right? But it wouldn't be yelling at them. And so again, whether it's looking at the Korean/Asian store owners, their lived reality, that where they can't do some of the expectations, and how can you address some of those human conditions that have also set them up for failure. And also, again, the challenges that for many, who walk in the door of the store, the challenges that they face. And again, how can you address some of those human conditions so that we don't see each other as the enemy as well?
And as you did, the tough conversation happened. And in that, somehow empathy was built. And that empathy led to a deeper friendship and a more true allyship.
Yes.
A lot of wisdom, Hapen, just coming from your experience in the community. And I thank you so much for giving us this wisdom that we could take away a little bit of fruit from a lot of pain.
Thank you.